Welcome back to BLOCKTV. It's time now for Bird Talk, in which we talk crypto Twitter with Pierre Rochard, one of Bitcoin's fiercest advocates who's been writing and advising about the cryptosphere since 2013. Every week, Pierre shares his insights on his favourite and least favourite tweets of the week and breaks down the reasons for his choice. Pierre, thanks so much for joining us again.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, so kicking off this week, we've got an interesting tweet coming out of Square Crypto talking about their hire of Matt Corallo, a Bitcoin Core contributor. What can you tell us that drew you to this one? Why do you find this so interesting?
Yeah, so Square Crypto is an initiative that was recently started this year. And really, I think it came from Jack Dorsey's deep interest in Bitcoin and Lightning as well, for that matter. He appeared on a couple of Bitcoin podcasts and elaborated on this. So they also have the Cash App, and the Cash App allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin here in the United States with a very easy UX. So clearly they have an interest in the ecosystem, and Jack wanted to create an organization that is not creating things for commercial purposes, but is actually contributing back to the open source ecosystem where Bitcoin is developed. And so the first hire they had was Steve Lee. Steve Lee was formerly at Google. He's a product manager and has an excellent understanding of the Bitcoin open source ecosystem. And so they kind of brought him in to find the best talent that they could pull together a team to push Bitcoin forward. And so their first hire is Matt Corallo. Matt Corallo previously was working at Chain Code Labs here in New York City, which is also a similar kind of open source development research group. And Matt had a big impact both on the software development side, but also in terms of growing the number of Bitcoin developers that are contributing both to applications and to protocols in this decentralized space. So he instigated the creation of the residency program at Chain Code Labs, which I was fortunate enough to participate in last year as a Lightning resident. And in any case, he's also done a lot of protocol development himself. So if you look at his track record, he's worked on what's called Fiber, which allows Bitcoin miners to be able to receive blocks much more quickly than they otherwise would. And this allows Bitcoin to avoid having too much mining pool centralization. Otherwise, there's an incentive for everyone to use the same pool. Now, on that note, he's gone even further with a new mining protocol called BetterHash, which allows you to, instead of the mining pool running a Bitcoin full node, any miner would run a full node and be able to keep the system even more decentralized than it is today. Now, in addition to that, he's also worked on layer 2 development with a Rust Lightning library. Rust is an excellent new programming language that combines the high performance of C with also better memory safety than those low-level system languages. So it's great that he's kind of contributed to so many different excellent projects within Bitcoin. So we expect that to continue at Square Crypto. And it's an excellent signal that Square is in it for the right reasons, and also providing leadership to the rest of the industry so that others also want to contribute back to the open source ecosystem, which so many of these businesses rely on, yet they don't yet invest in having more open source developers contributing.
It certainly sounds like it's an exciting development for the space, and one closely to watch how they bring these new developments into the cryptosphere, into the Bitcoin community specifically as a whole, looking further forward. But speaking of the relationship of Bitcoin to its various alt cousins and brothers, as it were, let's talk about your least favorite tweet of this week. Now, this coming from Brian, you were talking about specifically BTC Sessions tweet referencing Brian Kelly on CNBC Fast Money, who back in 2017 recommended a diversified portfolio of cryptos instead of just stacking sats, as they say. Why did this fall under your ire as your least favorite tweet for this week, Pierre?
So I like BTC Sessions, the person who tweeted this, and he did a lot of excellent research on this. And it showed that my least favorite aspect of this is that people have been promoting this idea of diversification as a way of mitigating the risk of holding these crypto assets, because people always talk about the volatility involved and the large losses you can incur by investing in Bitcoin. And so they say, oh, well, you should buy a little bit of a lot of different things so that you have a diversified portfolio. Now, that sounds nice in theory, but the reality is that all of these other crypto assets are highly correlated with Bitcoin. And not only are they highly correlated, but they're also much less liquid than Bitcoin. So when they go down in value, when Bitcoin goes down in value, they go down in value even more. And this is the research that BTC Sessions did to show that the portfolio that Brian Kelly promoted on live, national television, not only, so it underperformed Bitcoin by 50%. And part of the problem also is that it still did well in dollar terms, but you would have lost half of your Bitcoin. And so it's important for traders to understand that when you're trading altcoins, you shouldn't use fiat US dollars as your numeraire, as your unit of account. Your unit of account, your benchmark should be Bitcoin. And so this portfolio underperformed Bitcoin by 50%. And I think it really highlights that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are not like the equity market. In the equity market, it does make sense to be diversified and to have exposure to a lot of different types of companies. But Bitcoin is in the currency market, and the currency market is actually very different in its dynamics because the only utility of a currency is its liquidity. Whereas in equities, you have a cash flow, you have dividends, you have a growth coming from the fact that companies are providing new products and services to the marketplace. So in any case, I think that it's a great learning opportunity for people to look back at this boom and bust cycle of the 2017 alt season and seeing that if we're going to treat this seriously as a competitive market for currency, we can't just draw simple analogies to the market of equities and say, oh, diversification makes sense. Not necessarily the case. It might just make more sense to stack sats and build a portfolio outside of cryptocurrencies, right? If you're trying to hedge your Bitcoin, you should go buy the S&P 500 or go buy bonds. That is proper diversification. Buying highly leveraged, highly correlated crypto assets doesn't really make sense. All you're doing is increasing risk in your portfolio. You're not decreasing risk.
So I suppose I wonder this, because this brings into the narrative that we've been hearing a lot of in the last week, a concern of those, I suppose, who fall outside the Bitcoin sort of realm of preference, the non-Bitcoin maximalists, as it were, who've been saying that those who are self-professed Bitcoin maximalists, supremacists, whichever preferred term you wish to use, come across as mean-spirited, hostile, and potentially damaging to a wider ecosystem that's being created. Do you think that narrative has anything at play here in these sort of conversations like the one we're having now? Or do you think at the end of the day, you just got to talk raw numbers, and the fact is Bitcoin is far and away the market leader, and that's all that matters?
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of people who thought this is not the outcome that would happen. They thought that that this is not a market for currencies in the way that the Bitcoin maximalists have described, which is kind of along the lines of Austrian economics, where you have a convergence on one most liquid asset. Instead, they thought that this would be a market for tokens where it is driven by the underlying utility of the technology rather than the market liquidity. And so by having their investment thesis disproven by the marketplace, it has turned rather nasty in terms of now they no longer want to argue about the monetary economics. They don't want to argue about the engineering because Bitcoin is scaling. What they want to argue about is personal vendettas and personal attacks on individuals rather than trying to figure out where they went wrong. And so that's kind of what we're seeing. It's unfortunate, it's nasty, but ultimately I think that that'll flame out, and people will realize that, hey, there's no need for this kind of nastiness on social media. Instead, let's just look at the facts, and there's no reason why someone can't invest and buy in Bitcoin while also working on alternative systems that are decentralized, but that just won't accrue value in the same way that Bitcoin will. So, for example, if you want to be issuing security tokens on Ethereum, you can still own Bitcoin. There's nothing that says that you have to own Ethereum in order to build on Ethereum. And so I think that that's a realization that will become increasingly clear in the marketplace, and it'll kind of take away a lot of the venom that's involved when people are upset that they lost money.
So then I suppose to ask you the direct question, Pierre, as a self-professed fierce advocate of Bitcoin, I won't use any other particular terms, that's for you to decide what you identify as, but certainly a definitively fierce advocate of Bitcoin, what other projects do you specifically see having inherent value that exists in the sphere at the moment?
Yeah, so I think that it's funny because there's so many other projects that I am interested in. So for example, just Lightning alone is a separate project from Bitcoin's base layer. People just don't see it as separate because Lightning did not create a new token. And similar in terms of the wider world of technologies, I'm also a fierce advocate of using SQL databases, relational databases, instead of NoSQL databases. So again, there's just isn't that level of hostility towards me for that, because I'm not arguing against someone's token. I'm just arguing against the technology itself because there's no token involved. And so I think that there's a lot of different technologies that I'm a proponent of. They just don't have a token associated with them because there's no token needed for them. And so I think that that's kind of where there's a disconnect, where I am pro innovation, but that is separate in terms of engineering from whether I'm pro someone owning another crypto asset. So if someone wants to own Litecoin or they want to own Monero, that's a different question than if they want to run a SQL database.
And so in terms of sort of your view of the best way for the marketplace as a whole to grow, for the narrative of mass adoption to take hold, you think that there is but one answer, and that answer is Bitcoin?
So I think that just as an empirical matter, a lot of altcoins appeal to different people. And so what happens is that people get exposed to altcoin marketing, and it hits a certain part of their brain where Bitcoin did not hit that. And then they buy into that altcoin, they start doing more research into the space, and eventually they start learning about Bitcoin itself. Now, whether they start learning about it because they are actually reading Mastering Bitcoin or reading Grokking Bitcoin, or because they've lost money on their altcoin and they're trying to understand why, then eventually they come to Bitcoin. So I think that a lot of different altcoins provide different marketing hooks that bring in new people, and that's great. But I don't think that they should try to attack Bitcoin unfairly and try to malign it on social media. I just don't think that's a winning strategy. Ultimately, you have to put forward a positive vision for why your altcoin is great, rather than just trying to frame it as Bitcoin is bad, it's evil, and thus you should use my altcoin.
All right, certainly it's a difficult and competitive space, and will still continue to evolve for now and for probably many years to come. We'll have to watch closely as the crypto sphere takes shape as a mature market. But in the meantime, I want to thank you, Pierre Rochard, for bringing us your favorite and least favorite tweets for this week. I look forward to speaking again next week. And in the meantime, stay with us at blocktv.com for all the latest in news and information. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.